Okay, now we're officially live. I would like to say that this 7th Foundation event is brought in partnership with Photo Wings, and I would like to welcome everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today to talk about something urgent and deeply important. We're going to discuss here how journalism in Latin America is resisting authoritarianism. I'm here, Leonardo Carrato. I'm a contributing photographer to the 7th Foundation, and I will be your moderator for this conversation. Before we start, I would like to contextualize a bit, bringing some numbers, and say that across the region, we're seeing a worrying trend. Press freedom is definitely under attack. According to Reporters Without Borders, more than 70% of the countries in the Americas saw a drop in their political indicator for press freedom just this past year. And between early 2022 and 2023, UNESCO recorded 69 journalists killed in Latin America, more than anywhere else in the world, even surpassing war zones like Ukraine and Syria. But despite that, journalism in our region refuses to back down. It keeps adapting, evolving, and resisting. Reporters are finding new ways to hold power to account, often at great personal risk. And today we're lucky to hear from two of them. We have here as our guests Carlos Eduardo Huertas, who is the director of CONNECTAS, and Carlos Herrera, a photographer from Nicaragua and co-founder of Divergentes. Both organizations are considered two of Latin America's most vital investigative journalism platforms. We are going to dig into how they're doing this work, why it matters, and why it means for the future of journalism and democracy in Latin America. So thanks for being here, and let's get started. And I would like also to say that the comments are open, and we'll have some time at the end to go through them. So by saying that, Carlos Huertas, we would like to start with you. If you please could share your screen and give us a little bit introduction of yourself, and also a panorama of the current situation of this rising of authoritarianism and how CONNECTAS is dealing with it and how it has worked through the years. So feel free to share your screen.
Thank you, Leonardo. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to share with us and to underline our work. Carlos, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Carlos Herrera from Nicaragua, and I am a co-founder of Divergente. That is a digital media outlet working from exile, and I'm honored to be here.
Great. Thank you for my namesake. We say Tocayo in Latin America. It is a pleasure to share this space with you. And Leonardo's introduction, it is the harsh reality. Dozens of colleagues are murdered for their journalistic work. Another challenge faced in the region is the increased persecution through regulations, judicial harassments, and discredit. Colloquially, people in the region refer to it as the authoritarian's manual. We call it that because regardless of whether they are right wing or left wing, it's it's as if they were following a textbook. This paradoxically contradicts the reality that our constitutions, in general terms, are among the most forward-looking in democratic terms. They speak of freedom of expression and association, but in practice, they impose all kinds of restrictions through the law. The first country to implement it and develop this was Cuba. Although the Constitution dictates that freedom of thought, conscience, and expression are guaranteed here, it has never been the case. For example, in August of 2021, the government established its own measures of fake news, essentially banning online dissemination of what authorities consider false or harmful information. Under the new regulations, the government can also force tech companies to shut down these accounts of people accused of spreading misinformation. Cuba's star pupils is Nicaragua. Their colleagues speak of return of catacomb journalism, referring to the late 1970s during the Somoza dictatorship, when reporters were worked from church courtyards to avoid censorship. Daniel Ortega, the current president, along with his wife Rosario Murillo, were part of the revolution to overthrow the authoritarianism dictatorship of the Somozas. The couple pulled on the ropes of democracy and changed, but now they have become tyrants. Before giving the floor to my colleague Carlos, let's look at some image from a product we call Photo Podcast, a compilation of 238 photographs produced by the digital media El Faro. They are from El Salvador. It exposed from the front lines of brave photojournalists, Carlos included, what's happening in Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Let's start with Nicaragua, and if you have some questions, perhaps it will be easier if you post them in the chat. Okay, let's try the technical stuff. It works. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I hope so works.
CONNECTAS presents Photo Podcast, Unknown Images of a Beloved Region, based on the original idea of the photo concert by PhotoCap, produced by El Faro and CONNECTAS.
Nicaragua.
In April 2018, Nicaraguans lose their patience and mobilize against the abuses of the regime. In huge protests, people clamor for true democracy. Paving stones are used to set up barricades, just as in the days of war against Anastasio Somoza's dictatorship. The fight is on, and anything goes, from burning tires to planting spikes to flattening tires of official vehicles. Demonstrator spirits are emboldened after tearing down the trees of life, metallic tree sculptures that had been installed in Managua at the command of Rosario Murillo, Daniel Ortega's wife. They are convinced that change has arrived, but it does not. Hundreds are injured and killed. Young people arm themselves with handmade weapons to resist the well-organized police squads. Police officers aim to kill. Homes turn into places to hold wakes. Coffins multiply by the hundreds across the country, in cities and the countryside. Funerals reflect the pain, helplessness, and anger of the public. As the crisis unfolds, demonstrators upgrade their handmade weapons, and streets turn into actual battlefields. Assassins hired by the regime, unidentified and heavily armed, fire away and spread terror among the population. In the meantime, the police unleash repression upon civilians, committing all sorts of abuse. All of this takes place under the eyes of an undaunted presidential couple. The people in the streets hold on to the hope of rejoining their relatives who have been detained. Repression is everywhere. The government of Ortega disqualifies Cristiana Chamorro, a favorite to defeat Daniel Ortega in the election of November 2021. In all, 37 leaders of the opposition are detained, including 7 presidential candidates. Journalist Carlos Fernando Chamorro, also persecuted, goes into exile in Costa Rica. The suppression increases. The government blocks the import of newsprint, so the newspaper La Prensa halts its circulation. Its facilities are subsequently raided and its operations blocked. In 2018, the official kidnapping of Lucia Pineda and Miguel Mora of 100% Noticias leads to protests in Managua. The regime raids its offices and announces the facilities will be turned into a health center. Journalism is left unprotected from this repression. Judicial persecution effectively ends freedom of the press and information. More than 100 journalists leave the country and continue reporting about Nicaragua from abroad. The dictator sets his sights on the Nicaraguan Catholic Church because it protected the demonstrators. Several prelates, such as Monsignor Rolando Alvarez, Bishop of Matagalpa, are detained and put under arrest. These events are followed by heavy criticism of Pope Francis, whose silence is condemned. Alvarez becomes a symbol of the resistance. The image of the religious sisters of the Missionaries of Charity, founded by Mother Teresa, being expelled from the country illustrates the extremes of the government. They would not be the only ones. The resistance continues. and there is no doubt about the people's views of the dictator. The historic former guerrilla member Dora Maria Teles, sentenced to 8 years in jail at Chipote prison on the grounds of treason for having opposed Ortega, is suddenly set free alongside 221 political prisoners. The release is welcomed with delight by exiled residents in Costa Rica and elsewhere in the world. However, it is a poisoned chalice. The regime then banishes the released prisoners and strips them of their nationality on grounds of treason. This stateless condition is extended to others in exile, such as writer Sergio Ramirez, one of the country's most prominent authors.
Okay, Carlos.
Okay, as you could see, a lot happened in Nicaragua since 2018, and I will try my best to explain how we got there and how democracies can be destroyed in a few years. So Daniel Ortega returned to power in 2007, and from the beginning we saw the sign of authoritarianism were evident, and in particularly in the handling of public information. So journalists were denied to access to official events, and ministers and public officials were prohibited to speak into the media, and in government communication became centralized. Even Rosario Murillo, the first lady then and now co-president of Nicaragua, introduced the policies of uncontaminated information. That means that all the information that should be true only she was authorized to speak on behalf of the government. So this eliminated any possibility of transparency of different perspectives. At the same time, the government and members of the presidential family began a strategy of media acquisition. Today, the Ortega Murillo family directs and controls at least 9 national media outlets, including television channels, radio stations, and news websites. And many of them even are run by their children, their sons and daughter. And between the 2007 and 2018, independent media were gradually pushed into the margins, and there was and despite, I want to say that this could not be possible if there were not some allies to the Ortega Murillo and some powers behind them, and or like more like ally with them, like the economic power of the private companies and the military. So in April 2018, everything changed. Now there were some social protests that were triggered by a reform in the pension system, and they were like the people were met like armed repressions, and dozens of people were killed in the first days, And in less than 5 months, more than 3,000 people were killed in the context of the protest. And this was like a turning point to journalists. So we weren't prepared for this. The journalists, the local journalists like myself, we didn't have like bulletproof vests or helmets or gas masks because we didn't need it before. Nicaragua until 2018 were one of the most secured or safest countries of Central America, and we didn't have the equipment, the necessary equipment to go and cover this mass protests that were attacked with bullets. And well, the regime escalated the criminalization of journalism, and newsrooms like Confidencial, 100% Noticias, and La Prensa were raided, but then were confiscated, And well, we saw that journalists were arrested and prosecuted, and in many cases, they were forced into exile, like myself. And repression is not only physical, but it was like a financial legal persecution. And press organization lost legal status, and bank accounts were frozen, and equipment and facility were seized. And well, today Nicaragua is the only country in the continent that don't have a newspaper in circulation. Even Cuba have Granma, that is like the official is newspaper, but at least they have Granma. In Nicaragua, you can't find right now a newspaper in the streets because La Prensa, it was the last standing newspaper was confiscated in 2021, and like many others, like Divergentes, now they operate in exile. And so practically all the media that are critical to the regime of Ortega Murillo are working under extremely difficult conditions in exile. And all the media that are inside Nicaragua are controlled by the government or are in total they can't critique or do normal journalism because they face prison or confiscate their media. So the media whose critic is working in cities like San Jose or Miami from exile, and we had to get secure communication channels with sources inside Nicaragua to protect their identities. Journalists, they can sign their notes because even if we are in exile, we always can be harmed through our families that are in Nicaragua, and we saw this in the past. And well, we have to find new ways to remain financially viable. So all the media is working with the support of the international cooperation, and even the new administration of the United States closing USAID it was like a really harm to the Nicaragua media in exile. And well, the ecosystem in Nicaragua, the ecosystem of the media in Nicaragua is right now in a very hostile situation, and only survives in secrecy or in exile. So this makes Nicaragua the most extreme case of authoritarian regression in Central America, and one of the most hostile environment for journalists in the entire hemisphere. Thanks.
Yes, as Carlos mentioned, in this challenging environmental alliance among journalists emerges as a way to escape this new legality under which free and independent journalism is persecuted. There is no point in competing against a strong adversary with no scruples and who use every tool to censor your voice, a Cuban colleague once told me. This is part of our mission in creating CONNECTAS, a nonprofit organization that promotes the production, exchange, training, and dissemination of information on key issues for the development of the countries in the Americas. I want to share my screen to see. Okay, let's see again. Yes, now you see my screen now, no?
Yes, wait.
Yes, this is Nicaragua. Nocaya is a series of investigations. Nicaragua, Nocaya translate like something like Nicaragua can be silent. No? We brought together 20 journalists from the United States, Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Argentina, and of course Nicaragua to denounce the institutional deterioration of the country and its democracy. These images are for the streets of Nicaragua. No? It's somebody walking on the streets and see the reports. The result was several articles detailing Ortega's rise to power and his control of local law enforcement agencies, including, for example, how policies officers can get away. You see the movement in the screen, yes? Okay. How the police officers can get away with massacring of a family. And one of the keys to dealing with extreme situation has been not considering other media outlets as competition, focusing instead of collaboration and on creating alliance between traditional and independent media outlets. And now we are going to talk about El Salvador.
Before we go to El Salvador, I think there are two questions here about Nicaragua, so it's best to put them now than later. There is one for Santi Posa, that he considers himself a documentary photographer, and how hard do you think would be for a unknown person like me to go to Nicaragua to take pictures?
Short answer, don't do it. Don't do it. It's now extremely dangerous. There is no safe way to do it. There is no legal way to do it. And if you go lying and trying to do it illegally, could be really hard consequences. They have all the media, all the resources to find you, to spy you, to find out what you're doing, and you could end imprisoned as it happened in the past. Foreign journalists had ended imprisoned 48 hours and tortured, and they won't let you sleep for 48 hours, and then they will kick out of the country.
And another one, but first, before we go to the other one, because for me Nicaragua has this
Leo, it countered it even as a tourist. Yes, even as a tourist, people it what journalists were doing, entering as a tourist, and then inside Nicaragua doing some work, but it's extremely dangerous. And if they find out who you are, and then they can Google you, even they won't let you in the country. But if you can enter Nicaragua as a tourist, I wouldn't recommend. The risk is too high, and all the people who could help you, like a stranger, are now in exile. There is no one inside Nicaragua can help you doing some work.
So how is the challenge now, like doing this journalism in exile, at least in a photographer's perspective? How you guys, show images or collect images from the current issues?
Yeah, well, that is one of the big challenges. And the big losses that we had. We can have like new images in of Nicaragua. Maybe we can do some work with cell phones, but right now extremely dangerous to document with a normal camera in Nicaragua. So even if there are some people that could do it, as I'm saying, Santi, it's extremely dangerous. Even if there is a photographer inside Nicaragua, contact him and asking him to go to the street and document something extremely dangerous. So images definitely a loss for us. But we had ways to keep informing to the people of Nicaragua, and we clearly support of our work in the social media, but it's not the main product that we have. I don't know if it's called product, but all the media in Nicaragua is working in with their websites, and we got the numbers. We know that the public in Nicaragua are reading us, and we're just seeing extremely secretly ways to speak with people inside Nicaragua. And well, it is dangerous, and everyone that is involved in this operation of keep informing on the people of Nicaragua have to know the consequences that could be prison or exile. So it's the only way. It's the way we are doing it, and not. We have also a lot of work to do with the people, the thousands of people that are outside Nicaragua, and that they're having a difficult situation in exile.
Okay. We just have one more, so we can move to El Salvador from Jürgen Hoth. I hope I'm saying it right. Has social media substituted Nicaragua's traditional media in its role of providing qualified information to the public? If so, how has journalism adapted to this new reality?
Yeah, I will say no, because we have like some media that we are like forced into the digital space. No, we are forced into our websites, but we don't have like in other countries like these big figures like that are like substituting the traditional media with a podcast or with a really popular YouTube channel. You know? We have media, we still media. We don't have big media. Everything changed forever, maybe, because even the biggest media of Nicaragua, and were maybe La Prensa, that had hundreds of people working for them. Now they are like 40 people working in La Prensa. We in Divergente are like 18, and there is a lot of people of media that were born after the 2018, and they are struggling to inform, but they have audience, and they have a really good, and they're doing a really good job.
Okay. He's asking again, what the most reliable websites to learn about situation in Nicaragua? I would say we have
Yeah,
two here. We have
Well,
two here, so
Libergente is one of them.
yeah.
There's a lot, but it's not a lot of, because actually this is one of the crucial factor now, because is no new generations for journalists in Nicaragua, because the authoritarianism closed the universities, and the journalists are outside in the exile, and nobody replace, nobody create new stuff, and you can see information in the traditional media like La Prensa, and in the lens level it's confidential, and probably the younger is something like Divergentes, but it's around 10 or 12 offers of information. But unfortunately now with the close of the cooperation, international cooperation, it's in a dramatic moment for the journalism in Nicaragua. Let's go into El Salvador, and let's continue after with the
Yes,
other questions.
because Nicaragua is, yeah, people are,
Yes,
they're,
that's right.
it's
Okay, okay, we are going to talk about 4 or 5 countries. If you are agree, we can maintain the question to the end. And
yes,
great,
let's go.
Carlos. Let's go with El Salvador.
Okay, well, El Salvador is like the best student of Ortega. I don't know, in Central America, you know. What we saw in El Salvador is like everything is happening very fast, you know. Bukele is using his high popularity to dismantle the democratic institution, and well, we saw early sign of authoritarianism in the first year. And Bukele has publicly attacked journalists and media outlets on social media. They're label the journalists as opponents or enemy of the people, and he promotes a narrative aimed at discrediting those investigating corruption, of the misuse of public funds within his administration. So everyone that has followed the El Salvador journalism knows that the investigative journalism there is very high quality, and they were there before Bukele. So now, just because Bukele is very popular, they are just trying to discrediting their work. So media outlets like El Faro, Gato Encerrado, and Revista Factum have been repeatedly targeted with campaigns and arbitrary tax audits and digital surveillance. So they have this big case of surveillance through this spy software called Pegasus, and well, they're facing also systematic financial harassment. Bukele, his popularity is like a big shield, you know, and most of the action they have, um, it's just have kept this narrative of he held the narrative of the security to keep the popularity and dismantle some democratic institutions. So um, this control that Bukele has now is not very different from what is happening in Nicaragua, because right now you can be sure if they use the law to go against the journalism, and you're not sure if you are going to have due process, and that you're going to have a fair trial. So all this control, he has all the control in the constitutional court. They have the attorney general. He have the military with him, and even he, like Ortega, um, twist the constitution to the re-election. So all of this has like aligned to his insurance. He has reformed laws to consolidate the executive control and military democratic institution. Like in 2020, he entered the legislative chamber with the military and sit and pray in the president of the legislative chamber, as a sign of force. So yeah, the government has also had all the control in the public information. And something that the journalists of El Salvador told us is most of the information that could be in the interest of the people of El Salvador are now in reserve. Everything is secret. So they are having a hard time to investigate corruption in the Bucalismo. Unlike Ortega, they haven't closed like all the civic spaces, but we think that it's because he hadn't needed yet, because of his popularity. But it's very, very dangerous that Bukele keep all the control that he has, and the propaganda that he had, because when we think that when he need to repress and close civic spaces, he will do it, and nobody is going to be able to stop him.
Okay, let's see the part of the photo podcast that is related with El Salvador.
Okay.
So, and now.
El Salvador.
A new generation rises to power in El Salvador on June 1st, 2019, represented by Nayib Bukele, a millennial president who tore apart the bipartisanship that had prevailed since 1989, thus generating expectations of change. But soon his dark side becomes evident. On February 9th, 2020, he takes over the National Assembly with soldiers. His authoritarian journey has begun. Young men imprisoned in detention centers exemplify the government's forceful.
Carlos.
Stop. Okay.
I think she got disconnected. Maybe he had some
Okay,
issue.
some questions.
Let's wait a minute for him to come back. Let's see if he's...
Well, I can answer to Jorge O.
Okay. Yeah.
So he asked, in your experience with seeing the rise of authoritarianism in Nicaragua, do you see the same path in rise in the U.S. With the current administrations, and media has already capitulated to them, and we are in danger of losing freedom of the press? Well, we are seeing the rise of authoritarianism. Sorry, I had a hard time with that word. In all the world, and not only in the U.S. We are seeing this rise in authoritarianism in all the world, but we think that some countries had more strength, institutional strength, than others. I'm right now living in Costa Rica, and we had a president that is against the press, but this country has some solid institutions. So when you have this independence in the powers of the state, so it's more difficult for a president to impose and to change laws and everything. So yeah, we're seeing that, but we feel that this is the time where democracy has to work, and is only with these independent powers that they could just not be like Nicaragua or Salvador.
Sorry, I have a internet trouble. I go back.
Problem.
You can say that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do.
With the judicial branch on his side, Bukele starts persecuting opposition politicians and representatives from previous governments, such as the former mayor of San Salvador, Ernesta Mason, who had once been photographed alongside the president and the ambassador of the United States. Restrictions on the press soon followed. Bukele insists on implementing Bitcoin as the legal tender, which leads to protests in September 2022 and eventually causes popular indifference towards the Chivo wallet, the official e-wallet. On March 27, 2022, after a weekend with 87 homicides, the government declares the state of exception to control the violence inflicted by criminal gangs called the Maras. But journalists revealed that the deaths were really the result of a ruptured secret agreement between the Bukele administration and the criminals. The government issues new measures that sentence hundreds to jail on the mere hint of a link with the criminal gangs. Raids take place everywhere. Women camp in front of the jail, Centro Penal La Esperanza, where many of the detainees are held. The repression is brutal. Many died in that jail. The official representatives, the armed forces, and some loyal supporters give Bukele the backing he needs to legitimize his anti-democratic practices. Ever since, the state of exception, arrests, police violence, persecution, and deaths in jails become daily occurrences. Extensions to the state of exception managed to dismantle the maras and provide a sense of relief. Overall, the people are thankful for it. Pictured here is the football pitch of Las Margaritas in Soyapango, which used to be a bloody border between the Maras MS-13 and Barrio 18 Sureños. Now, the community uses it every day. The price paid? Gone is the presumption of innocence, among other human rights, for thousands of detainees. In 2023, Bukele inaugurates a mega prison for 40,000 inmates, dubbed the biggest in America. The harsh conditions and the lack of judicial processes for most inmates raises doubts about the long-term effectiveness of this crime policy.
Well, this is the situation in Nicaragua, in El Salvador, no? As you see, it's independent of left wing or right wing. And another dramatic situation is that of Venezuela. Their Chavismo, in this place, the Chavismo and now Maduro's administration have already completed 25 years in power. That's why the 2024 presidential elections were so important. To have the information blockade, we create two media alliances that they call Venezuela Vota and La Hora de Venezuela. More than 500 publications is just in 2 months helped expose the situation of Venezuelan journalism in the face of increasing repression and persecution following the election held on July 28, 2024. These alliances implemented the use of artificial intelligence in what we call Operation Retweet. This effort amplify attention to what's it's happening in the country and coordinate the work of journalists and media outlets that produce verified, rigorous, and high quality information. This was the presentation when we launched the Operation Retweet. See, okay. This is okay, presentation.
Hi, I'm La Chama.
Hi, I'm El Pana.
If you didn't know, we're the host of Operación Retweet, and we've been sharing information in Spanish about everything that's happening in Venezuela. Now we will start doing it in English as well. But before we continue, and just in case you haven't noticed, we want to tell you something. We're not real.
We were created by AI, but what we share is very real, verified, and high quality content created by journalists. But why are Venezuelan journalists using AI though?
As you know, persecution and repression against everyone the government considers a dissident or sees as a traitor have increased since the elections on July 28th.
So, as a safety measure, we'll use artificial intelligence to spread information from around 20 independent media outlets that are part of the Venezuela Vota and La Hora de Venezuela initiatives, which have managed to assemble a team of international media in 13 countries.
We'll be sharing high quality and, more importantly, verified journalistic content.
You should follow us starting today.
If you find this useful, please share on your social media and amplify this information so the world also knows what's happening in Venezuela.
Welcome to Operación Retweet.
Welcome to Operación Retweet.
Let's now talk about the Guatemala situation, Carlos.
Okay, try to be quick. So Guatemala is like in a different situation, like Nicaragua and El Salvador. I have the opportunity to be in the streets on El Salvador and Guatemala working as a photojournalist, and I went to the before the elections in Guatemala when Bernardo Arevalo won the elections. And well, the crisis, the socio-political crisis that Guatemala is living is not a full control by one person or a figure. So it is not this kind of regime. But they have, like they call the pacto of corrupto, the ideal of the corrupt people. So and the principal weapon that they have is the Ministerio Público, is the how do you call them? Ministerio Público, the public prosecutors, so prosecutor office. So this figure, Consuelo Porras, is like the principal weapon that these corrupt people have. Who are the back of the corrupt? Well, they don't have a face. They are people linked to the criminal organization. They are linked to corrupt politicians. They are linked to corrupt businessmen. So what we know is they have a lot of power. And well, this institutional crisis have been there for a long time, and even with a president that wish to dismantle this operation, they have enough power to prevent that the president can do something. So yeah, we have one important case of a journalist that is Jose Ruben Zamora. This is the founder of El Periódico, is one of the most important journalists in El Salvador, and today he's marks 1,000 days in prison because he was arrested in July 2022 on charges of money laundering. So Guatemala is the most advanced case when they use the law to go against journalists, and the case has been riddled with procedural irregularities and lack of solid evidence. And what they do is that they prolong the cases with any amount of tricks to avoid that Jose Ruben can go free. So and they even had forced or harassed the lawyers that could defend Jose Ruben, so they don't take the case of Jose Ruben Zamora. So this pact of corrupts has forced into exile journalists, ex prosecutors, well, a lot of people who were investigating the corrupt governments and the pact of corrupts in the past. More than 30 persecution judges and justice operators are currently living in exile after being criminalized for fighting corruption, and many of them were connected, but is now extinct, CICIG, that it was like an international commission against impunity in Guatemala. So Consuelo Porra, the public prosecutor office in Guatemala, is listed in the U.S. State Department angel list of corrupt actors, and is the principal threat on democracy of Guatemala. So instead of investigating those in power, they are weaponizing the public prosecution officers against anyone who investigate the corrupt people. So the election of Arevalo brought the new hope, but the victory was abstract from day one, and his government is facing severe limitations, and Guatemalan laws are designed to have these locks that make it nearly impossible to remove figures like the Attorney General. And just yesterday, they arrest the Vice Minister of Development, Luis Pacheco, and several community leaders of the 48 cantones. They were this big organization that were protesting before the election, the electoral process. And they are arrested now. So right now is with Jose Ruben Zamora marking 1,000 days in prison, and with this news arrest, it's a very difficult time in Guatemala, when we could see a new movement against these corrupt people in the streets.
Okay, let's see the power of Guatemala. Again, an expert now.
Guatemala.
The indigenous community was vindicated with the historic trial of former dictator Efraín Ríos Montt, considered responsible for at least 1,700 deaths of members of the Ixil community in the 1980s. The country seemed to be at a turning point, with justice champions such as Yasmin Barrios, Claudia Paz y Paz, and with former Colombian magistrate Ivan Velázquez appointed as president of the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala. CICIG is its Spanish acronym. The resignation and imprisonment of former President Otto Pérez Molina and former Vice President Roxana Baldetti illustrates the progress made as justice prevails over corruption. Amid rising hopes, Jimmy Morales comes to power. After achieving significant popularity, Morales' image starts deteriorating. There is widespread poverty and even findings of human remains amid a deteriorating social situation. The CICIG accuses Sami Morales, the president's brother, of corruption, and the relationship between the government and Ivan Velázquez crumbles. A process to expel him from the country is set in motion. In the meantime, there are manifestations of support and opposition to Velázquez. Morales' term comes to an end in 2020 among jeers from the people. Alejandro Giammattei becomes president. The police shut down protests by indigenous communities against exploitative mining by a Russian-Swiss company in El Estor. They took everything from us except the will to fight for Guatemala. Turns into a popular catchphrase. Judges, prosecutors, national and foreign journalists leave the country. Others end up in jail. A fire in the Congress building in November 2020 evokes the intensity of the protests and disconnect between the state and the needs of Guatemalans. In January 2023, the Supreme Electoral Court rejects the candidacy of the indigenous presidential candidate Thelma Cabrera. This decision sparks protests from her followers in several cities. By contrast, a few days later, the same court endorses the candidacy of Zuri Rios, the daughter and adamant supporter of dictator Efrain Rios Montt. The general may have died in impunity, but his offspring carries on.
Okay, we are close to finish. Now we are going to talk about how in Latin America, the power of drug trafficking is the most important de facto power. You always must bear in mind this situation. Uh, its illicit economy and corrupting capacity have eroded our democracies in many countries. The presence of drug trafficking is featured daily on the news. Before, during the era of the Colombian cartels, their power was limited to the countries of production. Today, the presence of drug trafficking is increasingly dramatic in countries where it stores, transits, and launders money. This, for example, has Ecuador on the ropes. Mexico is enduring this situation in a system that is increasingly under pressure from the United States. And in Central America, the most critical case is that of Honduras. Let's watch part of the photo podcast about this situation. And that is close to the end. Let's see. Okay. This is Honduras.
President Manuel Zelaya is arrested and expelled on June 21, 2009, after summoning a constituent assembly considered illegal by the other public branches. Roberto Micheletti, president of the National Congress, rises to power. This episode explains the current situation. Demonstrators supporting Zelaya take to the streets. They face the authorities and demand the return of the president. Police raids increase. The First Lady, Xiomara Castro, assumes a leading role. Aspiring to become president in the 2017 election, Salvador Nasralla joins forces with Zelaya, who would return to the country. He is up against Juan Orlando Hernandez, who aspired for a re-election that was regarded illegal by many. Juan Orlando Hernandez was re-elected amidst multiple reports of fraud in the general election of 2017. A post-election crisis ensued. In several cities, demonstrations, roadblocks, and an overall feeling of distress sweep a country fearful that its democracy is in danger. Nothing could prevent the infiltration of organized crime. Hurricanes Eta and Iota make the social crisis worse. In the meantime, the massive migration of Hondurans to the United States keeps growing. Thousands of people are turning their backs on poverty, violence, and a lack of opportunities. With the reign of violence and mounting difficulties, the Honduran election seems to be a beacon of hope for democracy. After an initial attempt in 2013, Xiomara Castro wins the election in 2021. Her husband, Manuel Zelaya, formerly persecuted, becomes the first gentleman of the nation. In the meantime, Juan Orlando Hernandez is extradited to the United States, charged with drug trafficking. President Castro notably supports Daniel Ortega at international forums among her Latin American peers. The permanent presence of her husband Manuel Zelaya stirs up concerns about them becoming another power couple following the Nicaraguan example?
Well, as we mentioned at the beginning, these authoritarians manuals is like the workbook of several leaders in the region. They dislike the press power to hold them accountable, making it easier for them to impose what they want on society. For example, in Peru, laws were recently passed that validate the pre-publication content control, limit the media's ability to access information, or even make it possible for journalists to receive legal aid financed by foreign funds. The latter will help a growing number of lawsuits against journalists due to the legal support provided. It's worth remembering that investigative journalism in Peru has played a key role in uncovering cases like Odebrecht, one of the most scandalous in recent times, which has put several presidents behind bars. We are 3 minutes after the time. Sorry for this, but thank you everyone. And if you have some question, we're going to share.
We are losing you a little bit, Carlos.
Yeah.
You froze for a moment.
Okay. Well, that's it. It's a general overview of what's happening in the region. We must several conversations to give in depth about each situation.
That's definitely great work. I mean, we can really sense the atmosphere, what is really happening in all those countries. And I have a question that, in your guys' opinion, like, what's the way out? Like, because we see people protesting, but we see this authoritarian politicians get like reelected and changing the legislation. Press is under attack, of course, we talked about. So what's the way out? Like, keep resisting, trying to engage audience overseas, or what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good friend for us. That is Mario Aron, who is part of our cátedra that is focused on editors. He said nobody is successful if you don't believe in the work that they do. This is the part that we must to do. No, it's not easy. The landscape now in the region is changing, but it's not only in the region; it's in the world. No, right now the democracy is not so popular, and unfortunately, actually most of the population now is start to be under authoritarian regimes, and it's a difficult sign, but that's confirmed that is the right time to the good journalism, is the necessity to do the best journalism that we can do, and this is the type of work that Divergentes and Carlos do, and the journalists in the exile of Nicaragua do, and several colleagues and allies that we have in the region, and of course the CONNECTAS do.
Great. We had here some questions. What is the future of journalism in Central America? Perhaps crash courses for young journalists armed with iPhones? From Jürgen Hoth.
Well, we talk a lot with our colleagues of all Central America, specifically with Guatemalan, El Salvadorian, and Honduran journalists, and they are trying to defend the right to inform people, and I don't like to say this, but they have the example of Nicaragua, so they are more prepared than we were, and they are like learning how to defend the freedom of speech and the freedom of the press in their country, because nobody wants another Nicaragua in Central America or in America, in the continent. So that's the way, that's what we heard from the journalists in other countries. Now the situation obviously is hostile, it's difficult, but it is time to defend what is left of the democracy in our country. So the situation, for example, the situation in Guatemala is a very tricky situation, because we don't. It's hard to see who has most power, if the attorney general has more power than the president. But it's a very complicated situation, because uh, right now the attorney general is like attacking the president right now, and they are threatening, and they have the power to charge the president with some crimes, and then take that to the courts, and to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court could do something, and that could pass to the Congress. And in that country, the negotiations to do something like that, to take away the immunity to the president, is not like a normal political negotiation. They are could be big bribes to the members of the Congress, or even they could be like assassination threats to they or their families. So it could happen. It could happen that somehow the Attorney General can win a fight against the president if they don't do something. And right now it's like a very important time, because in 2026 the president can choose a new attorney general. So anything that would happen could happen. It's gonna happen right now. So Arevalo right now have like very big decisions to make if is want to end his period.
Okay. We are running out of time. We just have one last question from Ricardo Gaderrama. Has there ever been a Rosa Parks moment that would be appealing to mainstream culture?
So nobody wear a Rosa Parks. No, no, no. In any part of the time, as you heard about Nicaragua, for example, in the 70s was Somoza, now is Ortega and Murillo, and for that reason, the journalists need to be resistant, resilient, and the journalists must continue doing their job. Is the only option that we have, in special photojournalism, that has a very, very key component in the communication. For example, the photojournalism that I share in the chat uh, is only possible if these brave journalists going to the front line and take these pictures to inform and to make evidence for now, for the justice, for the history about what's really happened in the field. And for the reason we appreciate the work that Seven Foundation do. And of course, we are open to continue to create new synergies. And thanks for the invitation, Leonardo, and all the Seven Foundation team. And thanks, Carlos, to share this interesting panel, interesting conversation.
Yeah, in Nicaragua, that could be the most difficult situation of the continent. We don't have a clear path of what is going to happen. We know, because people read us, that the people in Nicaragua is trying to understand and find out ways of how we can get out of this dictatorship. But we also know that most of the people in Nicaragua right now doesn't want doesn't want more deaths, doesn't want to get into a violent situation. Times have changed. We don't see right now that there's going to be a big revolution or violent revolution. So most of the people want change, but want the change to be peaceful, because one of the most important things for the people right now is that there can be truth and justice. And what we learned from the past is when violent change happened, there is no truth in, and there is no justice for the people who commit crimes. So it's going to be a long journey. But in what we know as journalists is we're going to be there if anything happens. Nicaragua is a very small country and very polite country, and anything could change very quickly.
Well, thank you both. That was a real pleasure. I think we have now a lot to process, and I invite the people who are watching us to follow CONNECTAS and Divergentes on social media and the website. And yeah, let's stay connected. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Leonardo. I shared the links for the presentations in the chat, and I shared my direct email and the website for Divergentes and CONNECTAS.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you, Carlos. We see you. Ciao, ciao.